Hey guys, it's Elle. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video where I chat about all of the books that I need to read before the end of the year. So I made a companion video to this one where I chatted about all of the books that you need to read before the end of the year. So I wanted to compile a list of all of the books that are on the top of my TBR and the books that I want to give priority to before the end of the year. So let's get right into this video. The first book on my list is The Search by Nora Roberts. I really want to read a Nora Roberts book by the end of the year. I have just been putting off reading her books, but Jess from Peace Love Books loves Nora Roberts' romantic suspense romances, and I really want to get into her backlist. So this one I think is set where the heroine owns like a rehabilitation center for animals, and I think something happens where somebody is murdered or there's like a serial killer or something happens. And I've just heard really great things about this one from Jess, and I just really want to get into her backlist. So this is on my list, top of my TBR, and hopefully I can get to it soon. And I have Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. This is a fantasy romance. I've been seeing this everywhere, and it is super popular. I loved Requiem by this author, and so I really want to give her fantasy romance a try. This one, I really don't know a lot about it, but I've just heard so many great things, and I really like to go into my fantasy romances not knowing a ton, so I just really hopefully will get to this soon. And I love fantasy romances, and there actually are a lot of fantasy romances on this list because I just feel in such a cozy fantasy romance mood right now, so I just am excited to get to this one. And I have One Dark Window by, I don't remember who the author is of this one, but I know that it's more of a gothic fantasy romance, and I know that Tori from A Novel Life absolutely adores this one, and I just hear her talking about it nonstop. And this is a gothic fantasy romance, so I'm just really excited to get to it. I just know a lot of people have been really loving this series this year, so I just know I really want to get to it. The next fantasy romance on this list is Fear the Flame, and this is another fantasy romance. Again, I don't want to know too much about this one, but I just know I want to read it. Again, I just love going into my fantasies totally blind. So yes, I just am in such a fantasy romance mood, so this is also on my TBR. All right, so the next book I want to talk about is The Women by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction book, and I normally don't read historical fiction books, but I wanted to give this one a shot. So many of my friends on Instagram and BookTube have been reading this one and absolutely adoring it. So this is set during the Vietnam War, and I think it follows the heroine or a couple of different women during this time period. And so I think the main character, she is going off to Vietnam as a combat nurse, and she just sees so much going on there. And like the big thing I think during the Vietnam War, mind you, I don't know a lot about it, but that there was this kind of thing happening where the people in the United States were kind of being lied to about what was actually happening in Vietnam. And so I think that's where a lot of like protests happened in the US and et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to learn more about the Vietnam War, and I just want to learn about the women of this war, because I think a lot of people that have read this book talk about how women in the war are very much overlooked. They are just not given the praise that, or even acknowledgement that they were a part of the war, like being there, being combat nurses or whatever it may have been. So I'm just really excited to dive into this world and learn about the Vietnam War and learn about women in history. And so I surprisingly, you might not know, but I love history. Like I love learning about the past. It's something that really interests me. So anyways, long-winded, but I am just really excited to get to this, and I'm excited to get to it hopefully in October. And I have When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is a very popular fantasy romance at the moment, and I've just heard nothing but amazing things about this one. So the heroine, I think, is an assassin, and she ends up getting like kidnapped or taken into this prison, and that's where she meets the hero. And I think he is like a king, and he's dealing with a lot at the moment, but they have this like instant connection and a past. That's all like the synopsis really says, but this is also fae, and I love fae romances, so I'm really excited to get to this one. She is huge, she's thick, but I feel like if I enjoy the romance, I will just fly through this, and I really want to get to one of the most like hyped fantasy romances of the year. So hopefully I can get to this in the next couple of months before the end of the year. And I have a ton of historical romances, so I'll go through these. So I have The Prince and the Rogue by Kate Bateman. This is a princess romance. I think it's kind of an inspiration of Anastasia, and so I think she like doesn't know that she is a princess, and she meets this guy who's a Bow Street runner, like agent, and that's the hero, and she's a missing Russian princess, and she has been hiding in London under an alias, and she's aiding the hero's investigation, because this series all revolves around like the heroes are all agents and like officers in like the Bow Street runners, and I'm really excited to get to this. I haven't read it. It's been on my TBR for years, and I really want to read some historical romances before the end of the year and pack some in there. So I'm excited to read this. And then I have One Fine Duke by Lenora Bell. I love Lenora Bell. She's one of my favorite historical romance authors. This one is, the heroine is raised by her overprotective uncle, and she dreams of a triumphant London season is finally here. She's determined to find a perfect match, and there's only one very large, very unyielding obstacle: Rafe's brother Andrew, the reclusive Duke of Thorndon. So I think it's like a Duke romance, and it's kind of like opposites attract, and kind of like I was falling for your brother and now I'm falling for you romance. So I'm really excited to read this. Just want to read another Lenora Bell romance because I absolutely adore her romances. So I'm excited for this. And then I have The Rake Hess by Scarlett Peckham. I have not read this book, and it has been on my TBR for so many years. The heroine is a Rake Hess, if you don't know what that is. Basically the female form of a rake. Like, she kind of does what she wants, sleeps with who she wants, and I think she meets the hero, and he's a widowed Scottish architect. He's a single dad as well, and I think they have a romance. So I'm excited for this. I know this one is very popular and a lot of people love it. And then I have Night Secret by Kat Martin. This is a, I think, like pirate romance, if I remember correctly. I can show you the step back, which is scandalous. I love it. So this one, I think, like, the heroine gets trapped on the ship, but then she ends up falling for the hero, and it's actually very emotional because I think he loses his sight, and so she has to kind of help him with that once they had like a romance, and there's just so many deep emotions in this one. So I've heard amazing things, and I really want to get to it. And then I have My Darling Duke by Stacey Reed. I've had this one on my TBR for so many years. I really need to get to it. She pretends to be engaged to him and puts it in the paper to get money. And he is a reclusive Duke, and he comes out of hiding and is like, who is my wife to be? And so I think they kind of like fake date. So I'm excited to read that. And then I have Lord of Wicked Intentions by Lorraine Heath. This is another Lord Rafe, and she has an illegitimate daughter. He is determined to have her, if only as his mistress. After her brother's death, Evelyn Chambers never imagined she would be sold to the highest bidder and give her little choice but to accept the Lord's indecent proposal. Oh, so it's kind of like Marriage of Convenience, but also not, like, what's the word? Arranged marriage. And this one sounds really, really good. I always love Lorraine Heath's romances. And then the last historical I have is Worth Any Price by Lisa Kleypas. I really want to get to a Lisa Kleypas book by the end of the year. And this one, he asks her to be his bride, and he knows that this will be much more than a union in name, only for he senses what Charlotte does not yet know, that her appetite for sensuality matches his own. This one just sounds really, really good. So the synopsis is very vague, but I just love Lisa Kleypas's romances, so I feel like I'm gonna love this one. I have Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. This is a hate to love romance where they are in the orchestra and they have to work together on a piece, and it's very angsty, I've heard, and really, really good. So I really want to get to this one. I've heard so many amazing things. I loved the first book by this author, Forget Me Not, so good. So really, really excited for this one. And I have Hookshot on this list because I still have not read this book. I really need to finish it, this series, and I could just listen to the audio of this one and absolutely adore it. So maybe that's what I'll do in October. But this is I think he's a single dad. Yes, he's divorced, a single dad, and she, I don't think it's as emotional as, the previous books in the series, but I just know he's a basketball player, single dad, and I think it's also a little bit of second chance because he's met her before and just really likes her, and so they have to, make their relationship work. But I love this series, so I really need to get to this one. And the last book on this list is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I really need to get to this romance. It is on the top of my TBR. This is her release of this year that is just blown up. I've heard so many amazing things about this one. It's just so good. I think this is they forced proximity. They have to stay together, and I think it's also fake dating. So I just really need to get to this one soon. I really, really need to. And yeah, I'm just excited to get to this romance. I need to read it so badly. I feel behind and keeping up with trends of reading this book, but I just need to get to it so badly. All right, well, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing me chat about all of the romances that I need to read before the end of the year. So let me know if you and me align on any of these, because I would love to know, and I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.
I was never the one to write up a song for just anyone. I was always the one to find myself lost in long conversations, 'cause I've always been told that things will unfold if you